So to everybody, I'd like again to say thank you for being here. And I have one apology plus message of love I want to send, and that is to Mr. Bruce Johnstone. Give him a hand, please. So in a little bit, Adam Portnoy is going to be celebrating departing vice chair, Seal Hicks, but Bruce Johnstone has been our vice chair since 2008. He's been with this organization since 2006. He is the super ambassador. He's a dear friend, and frankly, one of the, I don't know how to put it, when you put him in a room, there's just energy everywhere. So thank you. Grateful for your sponsorship of tonight's dinner as well, Bruce. Thank you so much. Before asking Adam to come to the podium and introduce Vivek, I want to just take a moment and just underscore a couple things. There are lots of changes. I mentioned it before. I just want to say thank you to two people who have been on our staff for a long time, and they are really important to us, two stalwarts. And I'd like to recognize Greg Sullivan and Tom Birmingham, both who have retired. Tom cannot be here because he's not altogether well right now, and Greg Sullivan is unable to attend large events, but doesn't mean we don't get to say thank you to them. So many of you knew Greg. Greg is, well, gregarious. I think that's what you'd call him, and he's kind. He was trained at Harvard College, the Kennedy School, Sloan School, and as a certified fraud investigator. He led as Inspector General for the state of Massachusetts most of the most important investigations of political malfeasance in the 1990s and 2000s. I'm not saying it's a great thing to put someone in jail, but putting the Speaker of the House in jail, that's a big deal, and he did things like that. So when he was leaving the Inspector General's office, we said, "We want you." And as our research director for 10 years, he was creative, he was dogged. One snippet will tell you everything you need to know about Greg, which is that I would fire up my computer in the morning, and I would say probably every 3 weeks or so there was an email from him at that he sent at 5:30 a.m. saying, "Hey Jim, I'm not going to make it to the office till a little bit late because I was torturing this spreadsheet." And so he worked all night. This is the kind of obsession that he had. He was an information omnivore. He's the kind of guy who went to lunch and he had his earphones in. He was listening to podcasts of researchers, or he's listening to audiobooks. Amazing man. His legacy at Pioneer, I think Brian Shortsley would probably say, was pretty important to the MBTA reforms. Yep, workfare reforms, tax policy. He designed tax incentive structures for research and development, all kinds of stuff. Just a really wonderful guy. I will remember him this way. Hands full of 2 pans of lasagna, wearing matching sweaters with his sweetheart Marion, coming to the holiday party every year. He looked ridiculous, but I love that guy. Heartfelt thanks to Greg. Tom Birmingham was also a fellow Democrat like Greg. A remarkable public servant, the author of the most significant piece of legislation on education reform in the last 50 years, and I don't mean that in Massachusetts. This is the fellow who wrote the legislation that took Massachusetts from mediocre to the very best in the country to internationally competitive. As a distinguished fellow at Pioneer for 9 years, he worked closely with Jamie Gass. Democrat, I would say he was very far to the left in the sense that he would have loved that tax that passed yesterday. But he believed in school choice every step of the way, not just school choice in the public sector, but in the private sector. Catholic school choice, Jewish day school choice, all of it. Whatever it took to get kids across the finish line. I'd appreciate if you just turn your heads towards the screen. It's going to play a very brief video in honor of Tom.
There weren't a lot of opportunities for kids who grew up poor in Chelsea, Massachusetts. So Tom Birmingham made his own. And when opportunity appeared, he never failed to make the most of it. It was in Chelsea that he met his future wife, Selma Botman, and it was there where they would raise their daughters, Erica and Megan. Tom enrolled in Austin Prep when it opened in 1963 and immediately made the fledgling high school athletically competitive. Tom was co-captain of the basketball team, a two-way starter in football, and also played baseball. He was inducted into the school's Athletic Hall of Fame in 2015. He wasn't bad when it came to academics either, earning admission to Harvard after a postgraduate year at Phillips Exeter Academy. Tom played football at Harvard and excelled academically. He attended Oxford as a Rhodes Scholar, studying Shakespeare. Next came Harvard Law School, then work as a labor lawyer, representing the building trades, bakers, and other working class clients who weren't unlike the people he grew up with in Chelsea. In 1990, Tom was elected to a state Senate seat and became Senate Chair of the Joint Committee on Education. By 1993, he notched one of the most consequential legislative victories any state has accomplished in the last 50 years. Working with House Education Chair Mark Roosevelt and Governor William Weld, he co-authored the 1993 Massachusetts Education Reform Act. Within years, Massachusetts students rose to lead the nation in educational achievement, and by 2007, they were internationally competitive in math and science. Tom's rise continued. He became Senate Ways and Means Chair and then Senate President before coming up short in his race to be the 2002 Democratic nominee for governor. For almost a decade, we've had the great fortune of working with Tom Birmingham. As our distinguished senior fellow in education, he has fought for the high academic standards and accountability that were at the heart of education reform and for the Commonwealth's outstanding charter, Catholic, and vocational technical schools. A great competitor, public servant, an excellent mind, and a treasured colleague. Thank you, Senate President Birmingham.
Good evening, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Adam Portnoy. As Jim said, I'm the chair of the board at the Pioneer Institute. Along with Jim and the entire board, I'd also like to thank someone very special here tonight, Seal Hicks. Seal is stepping down from the Pioneer board after a decade of service with distinction as our vice chair. A distinguished former member of the Massachusetts House and Senate, she worked with Tom Birmingham and the Weld administration on the Joint Committee on Education and played an important role in the passage of the Massachusetts Education Reform Act in 1993. Whether at the Whaling Museum, at the Almar Del Mar Charter School in New Bedford, at Pioneer, or as a teacher earlier in her career, Seal has always been deeply committed to a good education for all. In her beats very much a pioneer heart. Seal, if you could I ask you to please stand for just a moment, Seal? Thank you from all of us. Thank you, Seal. Okay. Now on to the main event. Vivek Ramaswamy is a New York Times bestseller author and an entrepreneur, has founded numerous successful enterprises. He founded Rovent Sciences in 2014. The following year, he led the largest biotech IPO to date, just as he was turning 30. Successful clinical trials in multiple FDA, in multiple disease areas and FDA approvals followed, as did the founding of other successful healthcare and many technology companies. Vivek's voice is an essential part of today's debates about the nature and future of capitalism, free speech, and identity politics. In books like Woke Inc. and most recently Nation of Victims, he has brought insightful thinking to the phenomenon we have all witnessed in American business in the past few decades, and that is the rise in prominent business leaders who have argued that it is no longer sufficient for executives to primarily focus on earning a profit. Instead, they argue, business decisions should advance a broad range of social and political causes. In addition to writing books and op-eds, as well as public speaking, this year Vivek founded Strive, an asset management firm that offers everyday Americans a way to invest in the stock market without mixing business with politics, without forcing individuals and families to adopt the divisive social and political agendas that most Americans disagree with. He's a first-generation American who grew up in the Southwest Ohio. He graduated from Harvard College and Yale Law School. We are very pleased to have him here and to learn from him tonight. Thank you.